Hi everyone, thanks so much for being here today. It's such a pleasure to be with you here today during, I hope it's not your lunchtime, but in the lunch hour and talking about food, so that's really cool. So my name is Sophie. I am currently living in London actually for the last 4 years, but I am from Cork through and through. But I am the founder of ACT4Food, a youth-led movement to transform food systems. And we're in over 30 countries now. We were born in 2021 because myself and a few others got really lucky, basically, and found ourselves in the back of this big decision-making room at the United Nations. And we realized that all these decision makers we're making some really big decisions without actually consulting the people who will be implementing those decisions in the future, and that's young people, right? So we really believe that there should be seats at the table for young people to be co-creating our future with the decision makers of today. And I know that sounds a bit like, oh, that's like a lot. What the heck are you actually doing? So we left this big UN room and we decided that we would come up with something that's completely youth-led, youth-initiated, and that young people across the world are actually going to take action on. So we created ACT4Food. And as I said, we're in 30 countries across the globe. Ireland, the UK, Nigeria, Kenya, Malawi, Pakistan, India. We're in so many places. And we attend some really big global conferences and really push for young people to be on every panel, every decision-making space that there is. So you can see, if you haven't heard of it, COP, the Conference of Parties. So that's a big space where a lot of climate decision makers come together and make big decisions on the future of our planet. So we try and integrate food into that space. And we also carry out quite a few local activities as well. So we hold food festivals across the world on university campuses. We create school gardens in primary and secondary schools, and we debate our decision makers at a community level to ask them where our food actually comes from. Is it affordable? Is it healthy? Do we have access to it? And to help us in this, we created a pledge. So we got, oh gosh, I can't remember how many signatories we have on the pledge right now, but it's in the few hundred thousands at this stage. And this is just kind of a pledge to act. So you have a young girl here from India. She's part of the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts in India. So we worked with them and a range of other youth groups to demand action from our decision makers to create a sustainable future for everyone. And after that, we said, yeah, a pledge sounds great. It looks great, but it doesn't actually create action. How are we going to make action from this pledge? And we basically asked over 100,000 young people what they wanted the future of food to look like. And we got over 100,000 responses, brought them to a voting mechanism. And these are our top 10 global priority actions young people want to see for food. So obviously you can read here, but they range from everyone should be able to afford healthy and nutritious food, to every child should eat a healthy and sustainable meal at school, college, or nursery, protecting food production from political disruption and conflicts, creating employment for young people in farming, but also in entrepreneurship, and lots of different things like that. So you're probably thinking, yeah, Sophie, this sounds great, but what are you actually talking about? What is a food system, right? It's so vast and it's so huge, and it's not straightforward. So food is just so much more than what is on your plate. And it comes from something called a supply chain. So a supply chain is everything from the person who makes your food on the ground to the truck or plane or ship that brings that food to a very large warehouse where it's checked for safety requirements to ensure that it's safe for you and I to eat. It's then packaged with nice branding, and then it goes from the storage and handling centre to what's called a distribution network, where it reaches our supermarkets or your corner store or wherever you might buy your food. So it comes from a range of different places. The supply chain is all the steps that bring our food to our table. And sometimes it's also beyond our table, thinking about all the food that's wasted as well. So this is just a little video on the journey of a strawberry. All right, so I think that's just quite a nice video that sums up the journey of a very specific food, a fruit or vegetable like strawberries. And I really like this video because it also shows how much is wasted when you don't eat the food, right? Because it takes so much energy and so much time for that strawberry to get to our plates. And I always think of my friends who are farmers in different countries. So on the left here is Pacific. He's from Rwanda, and he runs small-scale community gardens in Rwanda so that people in their day-to-day lives have access to fresh fruit and veg that comes from somewhere where they can see it. You know, it's not like you go into your supermarket and you buy it and you don't know the person behind your food, whereas Pacific really bridges that connection. And then on the other side, we have Heloisa. Heloisa's from Brazil, and she's actually a chef by trade. And she realized when she started up her first restaurant in Brazil that the people who were coming to a restaurant didn't realize where their food was actually coming from. They didn't know what was local to Brazil. And I think we also find this in Ireland. People don't know where their food comes from. So always keeping in mind that there are people behind your food, and also thinking about how far your food travels. So for example, here I have a jar of Nutella. I love myself a jar of Nutella. Can't pass up a jar of Nutella when I'm doing my shopping. But I do have to double think about my jar of Nutella, because unlike a strawberry, a jar of Nutella has many different ingredients, right? It's got soya, sugar, cocoa, hazelnuts, vanilla, palm oil, and all these ingredients come from different places. It's not like a strawberry goes from one farm and of course it flies across the globe, but it's only one ingredient that has to fly across the globe, whereas Nutella has many different ingredients that need to make it into a jar of Nutella. So hazelnuts come from Turkey, 2,260 miles. Palm oil from Malaysia, 6,484 miles. Sugar and soya come from Brazil, 5,447 miles. And that's bringing us to a grand total of 28,731 miles. One jar of Nutella has to travel in order to make it to our plates. And just for a bit of context, if you were to travel the whole circumference at the equator of the Earth, that's 24,901 miles. So your jar of Nutella travels further than the whole way around the world to reach our plates. So it's quite significant, and just think about the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that this emits and how much this is actually putting into our climate. It's impacting our biodiversity, and it's even impacting our soil and agriculture as well. And along the food supply chain, and even further than the food supply chain, and in our own homes, lunch boxes probably, plates, a lot of food is wasted. And it's a huge issue across the globe. So we really also need to think about how much we eat, and also how much food we waste as well. So we're only eating as much as we actually can, not leaving food to be wasted, and then only buying as much as we can eat in a week or in a day, so that we're not wasting that food either. And also think about what your food is packaged in. Single-use plastics are huge now, so trying to stay away from those, as they also contribute to waste and polluting our planet. Another thing that our food is part of is our food environment. And my food environment might look really different to your food environment. For example, I might buy my food from Lidl. You might buy your food from Aldi, someone else from Tesco, someone else from SuperValu, etc., etc. So it's where we buy our food. The information that's available to us about this food, if it's from the food labeling, so on the back of packets, you can see where your food has come from and what's in your food. But also things like the supermarket provides information on our food. And then also thinking about things like the information we get from TV advertisements or on social media about our food, because that can really influence us whether we realize it or not. So there's the availability of food. Where and how is food available to us? The affordability of this food. Is a healthy food actually affordable for us? Oftentimes I think actually a healthy diet is a complete luxury in the world, and this is something that we really need to stand up and change. Oftentimes the easier, cheaper option is highly processed food, and by highly processed I mean that food that has a lot of steps in its creation to make it what it is today, and compared to foods that just are what they are, like fruit and vegetables. But also food advertising plays a huge role in deciding what you and I eat, even if we don't realize it. So I have a video here. I love my videos. And this was a really cool group. This is actually a youth group in the UK. They're part of the Jamie Oliver group, so you know that chef. And they're a youth group who are standing up against junk food advertising. But what they also did was a social experiment with two members of Love Island to showcase the kind of shocking effects that junk food advertising has, especially on targeted groups like teenagers. So let's have a look.
nothing we do about it. Don't remember whether it's happening.
Oh, Sophie, I just realized there wasn't any volume, I think, coming from the video. I was just reading the captions, but I just saw there was a text in the chat. If you have any other videos, just a heads
Really?
up. Yeah,
Oh,
it
I'm
had
sorry,
captions though.
everyone. I had no idea.
I just
I'll.
presumed it wasn't meant to have volume. But yeah.
Oh no, yeah, no, it definitely has volume. I'm so sorry, everyone. Maybe Maya, you can share a
The
link
link.
to the video. Yeah, because it's
Yeah,
actually
it had captions, so we could
okay.
read what was going on. Yeah.
At least that much. Yeah, it's a really, really good video. I highly recommend watching it with the volume maybe when you get a chance. Or if there's time at the end, I can play, or you can play it on your side with volume. Sorry, everyone, I had no idea. Thanks for
I just see there's a school with their hand up. Is it Limavady? Your hand's up there. Oh, never mind. It's gone down. That's okay. No worries, Sophie. Continue, and I'll find the link and I'll pop it into the chat for people.
Amazing, thank you. Sorry about that, everyone. Okay. So yeah, this was just a video to show you the underhand kind of tactics that big food marketing and food industries use to subconsciously decide for us what we're going to choose, what we're going to buy, and what we're going to eat. And there's this group of really incredible young food activists that said enough is enough. We want to decide our own future of what we're going to eat and our own health. We need to take back control. So what they actually did is they went out into the streets, I think, of Manchester, Liverpool, Glasgow, London, and they took over the advertising in these cities. And they put these advertising pieces up instead that you can see behind them, saying that young activists bought this ad space so the junk food giants couldn't, to give kids a commercial break, which I think is a cool movement that they're doing, but also it shows to you just how vast that industry is, that advertising industry is. And I really recommend the next time you go out for lunch, or you're with your family over the weekend, just take count of how many junk food ads you walk by, and maybe do a tally of how many junk food ads you see compared to how many healthy food ads you see. And I think you'll be like quite shocked. And if anybody can find more healthy food ads than junk food ads, do let me know, because it's very rare. So another factor that kind of leads on from this is individual factors in a food system. So you might think, oh God, like I don't have a chance with these big fast food advertising industries. But once you're aware of the ways in which you are being subconsciously manipulated by these big industries, you can really do something about it, because we do have free will and freedom to make choices, but also it's dependent on who we are, the amount of time we have, and the amount of money usually that we have in our pockets. But then there's also these other things like me and you, we're completely different, right? We might have, I don't like carrots, you might like carrots, and that's okay. There are differences in the food that we're going to eat and the food that we're going to buy. We also might be from different backgrounds and different cultures, and that's all right as well. But all these things have an impact on the type of food that is available to us. So if you might not be able to afford a healthy diet, so you might have to choose other foods. Or you might have everything available to you, but you might be influenced by fast food advertising. But also, we also find that a lot of supermarkets are in really built up urban areas. So also thinking about, do I have access? Does somebody have access to these supermarkets where they can buy affordable, healthy food? And also time and energy and education. Do you know how to make a fully nutritious meal? Maybe you're somebody who has quite a big family and you're also working full time, and you just don't have the time to put into an hour of making a dinner a day. So it's all these other things that also have an impact on somebody's ability or accessibility to a healthy, nutritious diet. But in saying that, our personal choices, what we eat and how we get our food, they do have a huge impact on the future of our food and on our climate and biodiversity and the health of our planet. And just one thing I think that you and I can do to make a really big difference is reducing our carbon footprint. So as you can see in this kind of scorecard, at the very top we have beef, a big red long line, huge carbon footprint, and then lamb, and then something that I was quite surprised about was cheese. I love cheese, so when I saw this I was like, wow, my daily cheese intake is really committing to climate degradation. It's horrible. And I'm not saying that everybody should cut these foods out of their diets completely. I personally cannot. If you're vegetarian, vegan, I think really kudos to you. You're doing such an incredible thing for our planet. But it's also just not a viable option for a lot of us. So I suggest reducing your red meat consumption down to 1 or at most 2 days a week. With things like cheese or shrimp or pork, reducing that down as well to maybe every second day. And then the minimum amounts of food that commit to a carbon footprint or have a low carbon footprint are things that are just what they are, right? So vegetables, lentils, beans, rice, etc. So just think about these kind of ways that you can reduce your own carbon footprint, because even though you might think it's such a small thing for one individual, everybody's individual choices add up and do have an impact on the future of our planet. Also thinking about who and where we buy our food. I always say, just read the packets. Turn your food over and see the mark where it came from. And try and buy food that has traveled less than another type of food. So I would also always say, if you can find something that's from Ireland, buy that if it's affordable for you and accessible to you. Buy from an Irish farmer, an Irish producer, an Irish grower. Because one, your carbon footprint will significantly reduce, but you're also supporting a local grower, a local farmer, a local sector in Ireland, which I think is so important. And also another thing I wanted to say is that food is politics at the end of the day. All these individual choices and decisions that we make are within our own food system, but food also exists in a much wider and broader ecosystem of politics and conflict and disruption. And food is the one thing we all have in common, right? It's the one thing that all brings us together. No matter your belief system, your first language, your culture, or your religion, we all have to sit down and eat. It's what brings us together, honestly. And unfortunately, by many countries, food is used as a weapon of war, and what that usually looks like is stopping food coming into a country that needs it most. And specifically what we're seeing today is what's happening in Gaza. And what the people in Gaza are currently living on, they're in a state of famine. And they're currently living on, maybe if they're lucky, one meal a day or half a meal a day. And what that means for an individual is that you're so tired. You're so tired. You're malnourished. You can't learn new things. If you get hurt, your body can't protect itself against infection. So food is so much more than what's on our plate. I know I keep saying that, but it's also about health. It's about politics. It's about people's future. And I know you're probably looking at this and seeing, but like, what can we do? I would always suggest looking at where the food has come from that you're buying in supermarkets, and maybe if you see that it has come from Israel, buying food from a different country, or again supporting local, looking for food that specifically comes from Ireland, so that in some small way we can help protect the people who are currently in Gaza. But I know that's a bit of a sad point to end on. But I also do want to say that there are so many incredible young people really standing up and creating a change in their own countries day in and day out. And we do stand together as one in ACT4Food, and we're part of a network of young people from right across the globe and part of other youth movements that are currently standing up to create a change. And this is us in Kenya. Because we do a workshop once a year in different countries where we work together with people who are in different circumstances than us. And I really highly encourage you, if you want to be part of ACT4Food, look up our website, commit to our pledge, be part of that however many 100,000 young people who are already committing to creating a change, however big or small. Everything really does add up. And yes, thank you so much for listening. I hope it was interesting. I think I was in time, Maya. So back to you. Thank you again.
Yeah, geez, you were very on time. Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to pop your hand up and unmute, or pop it into the chat. But yeah, we have some time for some questions if you guys have them. I'll give you a couple of minutes to think of something as well. I suppose off the bat, like, you kind of, I suppose, spoke about some of the different actions that people can take, but within like the school ecosystem, what is something that I suppose students and maybe their teachers can try and do to kind of address some of those things? Like, I suppose, like, finding out where the food is coming from, is it part of it? But around, like, I suppose, food quality and food waste and stuff, I don't know if there's like things that schools can do.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think schools are such an interesting ecosystem because everybody's forced together for like a really long period of day in, day out. And are really influenced by what each other eats, right? But in a school system, reducing food waste, I think, is a big thing, and that's an individual factor. So when you're eating your lunch, please do eat all of it, or maybe bring less so that you know what you're going to eat is everything that you have. Another thing is, and this is quite a simple one, is committing to separating waste. So you've got your plastics, you've got your hard plastics, you also have food waste or compost that I'm sure many schools already have. Another thing is, and I know we don't have a set curriculum in Ireland on food and growing food yet. Maybe we will in the future. I know we've got a good one coming in on climate. I'm not sure if it's in yet, but it doesn't have a lot on food, I remember seeing. So I think schools can also look at, if they have the space for it, a school garden. And a school garden can be really, really small as well. It doesn't need vast amounts of space, but you can see exactly where your food comes from. And then also, if you've got vending machines in schools, look to see what's in your vending machine. And maybe I don't want to be the villain in the room here, but cutting down on the chocolate bars that are in the vending machines and maybe adding something else as well. And if you've got supply chains, food supply chains, maybe have a conversation with them on where their food is coming from, because these food production companies are quite huge and hold a lot of power in the food system.
No, that's really, really helpful. I can see there's a school typing in the chat there, so I'll give them a second. These guys are a new class of the new Climate Action and Sustainable Development. That's really cool, because there's a few schools around the country that are doing that. That's awesome.
That's really cool. And do you guys find that there is a lot on food in the curriculum? Are you learning about food growing, food waste, the politics around food, the food policies, that kind of thing? I know when I first looked at it, there was little, but it'd be interesting to hear how you guys have been finding it.
I suppose they probably just started.
True.
That's a good point. Actually, just on that, and I think sometimes it's helpful for young people to hear this, but I know that you started off in this like when you were quite young, and you've gone a really different, like, interesting trajectory. So I suppose if, can you maybe like explain to them a little bit about like what motivated you, I suppose, to take that step into the area of food? It's not something that a lot of people, when you look at climate action, go, food, that's what I want to look at.
Yeah, it's not very cool, is it?
But I found then when I went to college and I studied food policy, I suddenly found it really interesting, but I just didn't know what it was before.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I can start with my personal story. So I grew up in a household that unfortunately had a little bit of addiction in it. So I often found that a lot of household income wasn't going on to what was my sister and I were being fed. And I didn't realize that, because when you're in that situation, the norm for you is the norm. You don't know anything different than what you have. And when I moved in with my grandmother, my mom, my sister, I moved in with my grandmother. She lived in rural Cork. So we were living in Kildare, and then we moved down to Cork. And we ended up in rural Cork. And my granny just lived surrounded by farms. I think it was the first time I'd ever smelled cows. And I was, what the heck is that smell? Anyway, it made me realize she had this really lovely garden where there was tomato plants, apple trees. And at one point she said, Sophie, why don't you just go outside and pick some tomatoes and apples and bring in for our lunch? And I was like, you can do that? Really? That's a thing that people do? And she was the person that really made me realize that food is all around us, and it's so intrinsic to who we are as Irish people as well. And that made me kind of begin to really understand food and the importance of food. And then I did the BT Young Scientist and Technology exhibition, and everyone's probably rolling their eyes, but my projects always ended up being around food, agriculture, nutrition, and the importance of that. How can we get more access to healthy food for specifically young people? How can we make it affordable for young people? And how can we make it highly nutritious? Because I think our decision makers forget that we are the largest generation of young people to ever exist in the world. And at some point you guys will be able to vote, and you will have money in your pockets to spend. So there's such huge power in this generation to change the trajectory of food. So I ended up winning the Beach Young Scientist, and then ended up winning the EU Contest for Young Scientists, and then the Google Science Fair. And it made me realise that people like myself, we have a lot of young people have very similar journeys to me, that we didn't know where food actually came from. And it didn't matter where you kind of lived in the world, food and the broken system of food was a huge issue, whether you were a young person in secondary school in Nairobi in Kenya or in Cork in Ireland. Although the depth of the problem was different, the problem itself remained the same. So, short story long.
That was really well described. And I didn't know some of that, so thank you for sharing. No, we've been very lucky to have you here, and I know we're coming up to time, so I will quickly run through some bits briefly before we wrap up properly. But just for where are my little slides here? 2 seconds there. So we're talking a lot about some different issues here, and hopefully it's got your brain ticking and you're thinking of different things that you might want to do in your community, whether that's your school, where you live, your town, village. We have a few different things going on in ECO-UNESCO that might be of interest. So one of them is the Young Environmentalist Awards. It's a bit like the BT Young Scientist, but it's completely around the environment, climate, biodiversity, and it can be literally anything. There's projects around art, there's food, there's like things that people are doing at home or their school. It can be really simple, like just research or something, or it can be a big project. And you get a lot of support from the Young Environmentalist team. And it's a really cool program. You get to meet a lot of different young people from across the island. Another thing is workshops. So that's something that I'm on the workshops team, and we go off and we do workshops in schools around Ireland, and it can be on waste, fashion, food, marine life, kind of a little bit of everything. So if you wanted something in your school at any point, absolutely get on to us. And then there's after school groups as well. So there's things like the Youth Climate Justice group, if you wanted to explore climate justice a bit more in depth, or Youth for Sustainable Development is another one. And we're just getting clubs started up as well. So if you wanted to set up a group in your school to explore a specific topic, we can help you set up a club as well. And then one thing that's really important is, so we run Eco Week every year, and feedback is really important to us. And I believe you're going to be emailed this as well. But if you have the chance to do this now, I also would appreciate it. But all of the work that we do in ECO-UNESCO is informed by young people and what you guys want and need or are interested in. So if there's topics that you would love to learn more about, or topics that you really enjoyed, literally anything, it's really appreciated. And then just so you guys know, so this was the last session today. We have one more day tomorrow where we're going to be looking at Nature for a Happy Mind with Mental Health Ireland, and then what if waste could be useful with Biorbic. And yeah, just essentially thank you so much to Sophie for a really informative talk. I loved listening to it, and you touched on some really, really important topics. I remember when I was younger, food was like not something that was like high on my list of like issues. But I think like over the last couple of years, especially as I've gotten older, you can really see how food builds community. It's a really important part of our life, and I think you just shared it in a really lovely way. So thank you so much. And thank you to the schools who participated. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you need any more information or want to ask us anything, we're active on social media, and you can email us or check in via our website. But yeah, thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a lovely day.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you. I'll